Good evening, everyone, and a warm welcome to this KYC AML Deep Dive. I think this should be the first in which we are organizing as regards by virtue of the fact that we have a forum for KYC AML and compliance professional. I thought it'd be a good one for us to catch up for everyone that is in that forum. So that we get to know ourselves. I think we're on a different journey. Some of us are relatively established in our current roles. Some people are in the process of trying to get into KYC. That's why they joined the forum. Some are in between jobs. Some are maybe on maternity and trying to get back into KYC. Whatever journey you are in today, I think it's a good forum for us to actually meet, for us to share up minds and just be real, and just be open to ourselves. So this is what we're currently going through. We could see how we could support, how we could provide more needed support. I think that would be very helpful. We have a couple of experienced people today who will provide some somewhat much needed support or as regards KYC and AML. And so I think that's where we are today. So what we'll do is we will start having the panelists say one or two things as regards KYC. It could be area of job recruitment, or it could be the area of latest anti-money laundering regulations, or it could be the fifth EU directive, or it could be as a result of anything on KYC structures. So then once we're able to achieve that for about 30 minutes, we'll now leave the forum open for Q&A. Then we will now be real with ourselves and just share as much questions as possible. Yeah, I think that's what I'm looking at. So Aquila, maybe I think I want to get Aquila to be the one to start today. Then I will go into, we'll have a couple of persons. So Aquila is, I've seen the name, she's an MLRO for Dixie Pay. I think we've been colleagues for some time at Bank of America. And I think she'll do some good discussion. So let me open the floor to Aquila to introduce herself a little bit more and talk a little bit more on what she has to talk for us today. Then I will then maybe reach out to John Osei to talk a little bit more. Then we go from there.
Okay. Okay, John, I thought I was going to speak later, but that's fine. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for this webinar. I have been contacted to discuss or to talk to us about, one or two of the challenges I noticed that some people face when they go for interview or why they are actually carrying out their day-to-day road activities. And for those that are looking forward to join this, type of profession, I noticed that there are also some challenges they are facing. They want to understand what this role is all about, what they are required to know for them to be able to get into financial industry like banks or fintech or payment institutions, So, but due to one or two calls or some of my friends that may have contacted me in the past, asking me a few questions on ownership. And most times this has to do with when they're preparing for interviews. So I felt I should discuss this with us just to make all of us understand what ownership is all about. If you want to say something, you can raise your hands. I believe there is a link at the bottom of your screen or your phone that will help you to do that. If you want to contribute, because we are all learning anyways, if you want to contribute, you can raise your hands. You can talk to us what you understand by the term ownership and the things that we are expected to know to help us carry out our day-to-day activities in our various places of work or for interview purposes. So for today, I just want to quickly glance through an ownership structure. An existing ownership structure is just it's just an example. This is not a reality. These entities don't exist. They are just examples. And I would like us to just have a brief understanding, just briefly tell us what ownership is. Why are we supposed to look out for who the owners of the companies that we're onboarding? Why are we supposed to do that? And when you find out who the owners are, what steps are you supposed to take, to make sure that you curtail or you manage, you mitigate any risk that is associated with the clients? So understanding ownership will help you to be able to classify your clients properly. A client that is high risk and a client that is low risk or medium risk, what steps are you supposed to take to be able to understand these clients and be able to classify them correctly, and also enable you to, to monitor them periodically and also carry out periodic reviews on these clients? So the first thing we do is to carry out searches on the institution, on the company. Maybe you can make use of their annual reports, visit their website, and also, even when you visit their website, you collate their annual report, you gather all the necessary information you need. You're also required to contact them for clarification. For example, if you've gone externally and found out that company A is a low risk client, and as a result, what you need to know is just the individuals that have up to 25% ownership or stake in that company. When you gather this information, you are expected to send them an email to make them understand your findings and request for them to confirm your findings, that these findings are actually true. That's what it is. If they're not sure, if they're not happy with the findings or the information you sent across, they can come back to you with the right information. While I'm saying this is just for people that are already on the road, that are already carrying out this type of role activities. But for people that want to get into financial institution and they're asked to, maybe they want to get involved in onboarding or AML related activities or something like that, if they ask you a question who the owner of a company is, so the first thing you think about is, who is this company? Where is it located? What type of product do they deal on? So when you think about these things and so many other factors, that will help you to then quickly answer the question, whether I'm going to go for 10% ownership or am I going to go for 25% ownership? So when you understand that, for example, this is a high-risk client, I need to go for 10% ownership. That is where you start your work. You start digging into it. So now what I will do here, I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to quickly share my screen just to show you an already existing ownership structure. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Can you see what I'm sharing?
Yes.
Good. So we're talking about beneficial ownership structure. Okay. And as earlier explained, I said something about 25 and 10% ownership. So here, let's take it that this entity, we are looking at this entity. You can see, let me use an arrow or maybe draw something around it. Just bear with me a moment. I hope this helps. Yeah. So this is the company we're looking at. We're looking at this company. Is it a company? Yeah, that should be it. Yeah. So guys, we're looking at this company. this one. So this is our direct client, okay? Corporation A is our direct client. I actually extracted this information from somewhere else. It wasn't originally prepared by myself. So this is the direct client, is called Corporation A. And under this Corporation A, you could see there are two entities that are directly linked to this company, Corporation A. So the first one is Corporation B, while the second one is Corporation C. Why the second one is Corporation C? I hope everyone is following this. Please, if you have any questions, pause and ask, or just let John know. So the actual client we are about to onboard, I'm using this client as an example. We're about to onboard Corporation A. So now we want to know who are direct and indirect, owners of these entities. And bear in mind that ownership ends at individuals, except for government institutions. Ownership ends at individuals, except for government institutions. Just have that in mind. So the first corporation, it has 80% of Corporation A. That's Corporation B, has 80% of Corporation A, while Corporation C has 20%. And that makes it what? 100%. Okay? So now we've understood direct owners, direct ownership of this institution. Now we've come into the second layer. Would I call it the second layer? Okay, let's call it the second layer for the sake of this training or this webinar. Let's call it the second layer. So for the second layer, there is an entity named B1, which has 80% of Corporation B. Remember, Corporation B has 80% of Corporation A. So now let's finish with this Corporation B ownership. That will help us to understand what corporation entity B1 and B2, what are their stakes in Corporation A. Good. So what we do here, we say this is 80%. Please, if you have your calculation, you can help you. If you have your calculator, you can help me, John, please, or anyone else. So this is entity B1, he has 80% of Corporation B, and the other one has 20%. For you to understand how many percentage that B1 entity has in Corporation A, what do you do? Just for a layman breakdown, you would do, you can say 0.80 times 0.80, that's 88, isn't it? Times 100. Has anybody gotten the figure?
I think it's 64%.
Thank you very much. That's 64%. So now B entity has 64% of Corporation A. That's 64% of Corporation A. I put it up here, but I just decided to calculate it so you understand what I've done. Total percentage of ownership of Corporation A by company B1 is 64%. This means that B1 owns 64% stake of Corporation A. That's 0.80 times 0.80 times 100, just for a layman understanding. And that's equals to 64%. And then for entity B, it's just 16%, 0.80 times 0.20 times 100. That's 16%. If that's not correct, please let me know. So now this is a second layer of this ownership. So why I want to, I wanted to drill us down to this so we understand a complex structure, because that's the challenge that I notice people go through whenever they go for interview. They tend to find it difficult to capture or calculate a complex structure. So if you've understood this, we're not going to go through corporation C, because if you know how to do, excuse me, if you know how to do calculate ownership for corporation B, automatically you're going to know how to calculate ownership for corporation C. So, but I want us to drill it down to the individuals. That's the most important thing. So here, I've taken this man, this guy that has 75% of entity B1. I've named him Mr. Obot. The one that has 25% of entity B1, I've named him what? Mr. Sima. And this one, Mrs. Vicky, 100%. So what you do for you to understand the ownership of this guy, Mr. Obot, in this company, Corporation B and Corporation A, what you do is just the same way, 0.75 times 0.80 times 100. 0.25 times that gives you the information that you need. Then for the one that has 100% is very glaring. The one that has 100% onto corporation entity B2, entity B2 has what? 20%. 20% of this one. So they have, it should be 16%, I think. It should be 16%. So this is how to calculate ownership, complex ownership structure. If you are able to get this information, I believe there is no ownership structure that you will not be able to calculate. So another thing I want us to understand is this. When you understand who the owners are, what do? You know what the next thing you do is to carry out screening on them. But for you to understand the type of client you're dealing with, remember there are other factors that you need to consider. These factors have to do with jurisdiction, they have to do with products, they have to do with reputation, and so many other things. So when you gather this information, you use it to be able to build your metrics, the risk matrix profile of the company. And when you finish building this risk matrix, it will help you to completely classify the client, and that enables you to monitor the client, place them on periodic review. Maybe are you going to place them if it's high risk? What type of periodic review are you going to carry out? So high risk definitely we know is 1 year. So for those that want to get into the business and those that are looking forward to attend an interview, what you do while you carry out these searches is to enable you place them, carry out periodic reviews on these companies. And the type of periodic reviews you carry out depends on the classification. So if you classify a client as high risk, you do 1 year periodic review, or even 6 months. So if it's a high risk that seems to be extreme, it's ideal to place them on 6 months, so you'll be able to monitor the client adequately. So if it's a medium risk, you do 2 yearly. If it's low risk, you do 3 yearly. Okay? So this is my contribution for the time being. If you have any further questions, you can let me know. Thank you very much, guys.
Okay, thank you very much, Aquila, for the presentation. You want to unshare your screen? Can we welcome on board John Osei Kweku? He heads our KYC with Bank of China London branch. John, you have a few words. I was trying to see if I can share the screen as well.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I hope you're doing very well this evening. Pardon me, I think I've got a bit of feedback. Hold on a sec.
Yes.
Is that better?
Yes.
Excellent. Right. Thank you so much, Emelaro, for that fantastic, detailed introduction into beneficial ownership. For myself, I will talk a little bit about what you just discussed, and also a little bit about the KYC market and some of the things we need to be looking out for. So, from my perspective, first and foremost, we talk about KYC in 2021 very differently to how KYC used to be 20 years ago, 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago. Some of the things we need to kind of take into consideration is the fact that over the years, it has changed quite a bit. Now, when you look at the last 4 years or 5 years, we've had 3 different directives which have been released. Now, this used to be released usually once every 3 or 4 years, but the frequency with which they have released these directives shows the urgency that has been attached to financial crime and AML. Now, when you look at KYC, I would encourage everyone on this platform to move away from the old checklist approach of seeing KYC as, yep, let's tick a box, or let's just understand a few basics of the customer, and then screen it, Dow Jones it, Lexus it, do whatever, use whatever option you use, and then essentially just close up the case. It's a bit more than that. You've got to look at the totality of the customer's risk that they're presenting to you. Now, as our Emelaro said earlier on, once you understand the totality of the risk being presented to you, at that point you are able to then undertake a detailed risk assessment of the client to enable you to determine what risk rating or classification you're going to give to the client. Now, I'll park that for a minute and then come back. My experience in the last, especially in the last couple of years, when it comes to job seekers and going for interviews, has been the fact that a lot of people have turned up completely unprepared. What do I mean? A lot of people have got CVs that they have blatantly lied on it. I'll be honest with you, right? Because the biggest issue you have is you being able to walk the interviewer through your own CV. You ask questions about information on the CV that has been presented to you, and at times people haven't got a clue what the question is about. But hold on a minute, I'm not asking you a completely technical question that is new to AML KYC financial crime. I'm asking you about information you've actually put on your CV. Now, if you can't walk the interviewer through your own CV without stumbling or tripping yourself up, then you have blatantly lied. And sometimes that's why you don't get, you don't get invited for a second interview. Or if you do know that you haven't actually lied, then perhaps what you need to do is to learn your own CV, own it, so that when you get asked questions on it, then you will be able to comfortably talk about it. Because after all, if it's what you've done, then you don't really need to fumble, stumble, or trip and fall over it. Okay. I've also noticed that a lot of people come into interviews not very well prepared. What do I mean? Sometimes they fail to do basic checks on the company that they are actually being interviewed to go and work there. Your potential employer, you don't do enough research about it. Now, this is actually quite comical, because as a KYC analyst, SME professional, how are you going to go and work for somebody that you haven't actually done enough research on? You don't know when the company was set up, if it's been, if it's got subsidiaries, if it's a branch, if it's an FI, could it be a branch of the head office, or are you just going to assume that it's a subsidiary? These are basic things that if you're doing a risk assessment and also trying to understand ownership structure as an example, you need to understand whether this is a branch, or this is a foreign office, or this is a subsidiary. These are all different types of entities. So if you don't understand that, then what are you doing in the interview? You've got to be able to articulate that properly. And the attitude of, I know what I'm doing, I've been here. We've had incidents where we've asked questions, basic questions, and people have not been able to answer it. But instead they've had this arrogant look of, what are you asking me that question for? I know that now. Like, what is your problem? Right? Whether it's a basic question or not, you have to put yourself, or you have to come prepared so that you are able to answer those questions as you're required to do. Okay, so those are some of the things that we usually see, especially in the last couple of years. Now, the other thing as well that we need to broaden our minds about is being a KYC analyst means that you are actually a financial crime, financial crime specialist yourself. You don't sit in the second line, you rather sit in the first line. So your role is actually far more critical, believe it or not, than a lot of our colleagues in the second line of defense. Now, I'm not saying theirs is not important, it's absolutely critical, okay? But you are the gatekeeper. The second line of defense is not the gatekeeper. You are the gatekeeper at the first line of defense. So at the very least, you have to know as much as your colleague sat in the second line of defense. If you don't know enough about it, then you will have a problem, because the gatekeeper will not be able to do a good job of determining what risk they're looking at. Because if you don't know it, then you won't know what you're staring at is a potential risk. So you need to understand that you have to learn a bit more and almost become a financial crime expert sat in the second line of defense. But your option is to sit in the first line, because that gives a different level of engagement. Now, over the years, you find that second line of defense has turned more into an advisory capacity, right? And the practitioners of the financial crime AML regulations are now the first line of defense, which is you. As a KYC expert, you are at 1.5. That's what they call a 1.5. So once you get your head around that, then you start looking into things and making certain things your problem or your issue to deal with, like regulatory changes. When there are regulatory changes, you need to own that. Don't wait for someone in the second line of defense to digest it and then come and spoon feed you. You need to understand that for yourself. If you're able to do that, you will always put yourself in the best possible position to actually get the roles that you apply for. Okay. Coming back to the risk assessment and the ownership, as our very dear Malawi talked about, one of the things that we have to be aware of, or some of the other things we have to be aware of, will be the elements that goes into risk assessment. There are so many different elements, but some of the key elements would be obviously the ownership, as we've been talking about, right? The entity itself, the location of the entity, right? The nature of business of the entity. And most recently, the counterparties. So let me not forget the controllers or the directors of the entity, but most recently, the counterparties of the entity. Okay, whereby you've got an existing client. If you're doing a review, thanks for that, John. If you're doing a review on an existing client, then transactional activities, a detailed transactional activities becomes very critical. If you're in the process of onboarding a new client, then it depends on the type of client you're looking at. If you're looking at a massive company like, for instance, this is not a client of mine, I'm just pulling out the air, BMW or a Glencore as an example. You're not going to ask them for bank statements to understand their transactional activities. That will not be relevant here, will not be applicable. But you need to understand the purpose of onboarding that client. Once you understand that, then that will determine what level of transaction activities you need to look at, if any. Now, for those of you who look at the smaller end of the market of the entity type, if you're onboarding an existing client for another bank and they want to open another account, and it's a sort of a small corporate, then my advice is you need to ask for 6 months bank statements to understand how they've actually managed the account. Because at times you've got the front line eager and keen to onboard these individuals, or sorry, these entities, but little do you know that perhaps the MLRO has decided this entity is not the type of entity we want, so we want to exit it, right? So you need to understand why they want to open an account. It's just, what is it for? Because it's not going to be easy controlling, managing 2 accounts. So that account that they're opening has to have a specific purpose, and you need to understand that. And then you need to record the anticipated transactions or the expected transactions, so that 6 months after it's been onboarded, or 12 months after it's been onboarded, or 18 months or 24 months, depending on the risk classification you give it, which obviously drives the periodic review cycle, you will then be able to compare what the client advised you at the time of onboarding versus what they've actually done. Now, if there are any peculiarities, then obviously you'll be duty bound to go back to ask the client for clarification. That in itself will be either a red flag or a non-event, because you'll be able to explain it properly in your details. So some of the key bits that this is not the exclusive list or the exhaustive list that we look at, but these are the primary and basic things that we would usually look at when we're conducting our CDD checks. I think in the interest of time, I will leave it there and give Anthony a chance to also present. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, John. That's much appreciated. To go into some practical discussions as regards sourcing for opportunities, and just to see where we are today in terms of our journeys, the challenges which we currently go through. I know my namesake John did mention a few things in terms of how to prepare yourself when you want to go for an interview, and you get yourself adequately ready for such an opportunity. So I want to let's have an open forum for the next 30 minutes to allow people to ask questions, to basically talk about what they're currently going through at this particular point in time, the challenges, and let's see how we could, in a way, I would say, support and provide some guidance as regards their quest for new opportunities. So, but I will kick this up, maybe throwing the question. We're going to throw questions to the panelists who have a lot of experience in this area. I think they'll be very helpful. From experience, I'm not a KYC specialist myself, but I've seen a lot of it appears because of this COVID and the whole situation going on right now, that there's so many more people, KYC analysts, chasing few roles today. What I've observed, and because of putting roles even in our AML forum, is a role that is 24 hours, and you can see about up to 80 people, 100 people already applied for the role already. You know, some of the job I paste in the forum, I have to ensure that I kind of put the job out there within the last 2-3 hours, because if not, a lot of people are going to apply for those opportunities. So what will make you your CV stand out? What has to be on your CV? Some people may be asking, why am I not being called for interviews? Some people have applied for hundreds of roles today, and they're not being called for interview. What seems to be the challenge? What they have to be to make your CV stand out? Just you can have some thoughts and contributions. Aquila, John say.
Yes. I think, Anthony, what you just said is extremely important, because the continuation of it is a lot of the CVs we're seeing are actually very, very heavy. By that, I mean, you've got CVs that the person has literally done everything under the sun. There isn't a system they haven't used. There isn't any bit of information that they don't know, right? Yeah, and if you open the door and you interview them, the CV doesn't reflect what comes out of their mouth. Okay, so even if you found yourself a specific area that you thought this is your forte, okay, so you specify that, but then obviously if you've got other skills that you think will be quite valuable, you can add that on. The other thing you need to look out for as well is the issue of, how do I put it? Right, so going back, we talked about false information. The issue of being realistic. There are a lot of jobs out there that they are quite detailed in terms of what they require the person to have. And frankly, what I do, or what I've done in the past when I'm looking for a job, has very simply be look at the requirements, right? If you want it to be very detailed, pick up the requirements, put it in a spreadsheet, and then for every role, look at that requirement and then address it to yourself as to how you think you meet that requirement. You will find that at some point you will not be able to answer those questions, because when you go into that interview, it's not going to be a tricky interview. The interviewer is just simply going to look at what they're looking for and say, you tell me how you fulfill that. If you can honestly answer those questions for yourself, then you've got a chance of passing that interview. I'll quickly talk about being invited, getting through that gatekeeper. Getting through the gatekeeper, like Anthony said, is having that area of specialism. Now, I appreciate that someone might be on here saying, but I don't have that area of specialism, which is fine, okay? But just keep your CV very, very simple. Simple for the person to read.
Sorry, John, I got a question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go for it.
Can I interrupt you? Do you mind?
No.
So obviously in the CV you say it's best to be honest and say what you actually have done, what you actually are doing.
Yeah.
But if you see I don't have any experience in AML, why are you inviting me for an interview? I'm telling you I don't have any experience. I'm applying for the job anyway, but why are you inviting me for an interview?
No, actually, on the contrary, if I see your CV and you've been honest and I've invited you in, then that means that I've seen something in your CV that I like. And it's not necessarily going to be your knowledge. It's going to be transferable skills. This actually happened today. John knows I've been looking for a very qualified analyst. And I interviewed a chap that has got some experience, good level of experience, right? But then when you look at his background, it wasn't necessarily KYC. But what he was bringing to the party was the fact that he's got transferable skills in report writing, in undertaking extensive research, in reading regulation, okay, understanding it, digesting it, and also producing a report. So if you put your CV out there and it's as honest as it can be, and you are invited, the interviewer will interview you very differently to how they will interview someone who says they are a specialist. If you walk into the room and you claim to be a specialist, I'm treating you like a specialist.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
think there was a question, I think, which has been addressed anyway. For it was Kat who asked the same question in terms of how specific would you make your CV if you network in the forum. From my experience, it seems a very challenging industry because a lot of people have gone into KYC AML over the past 5 to 10 years, and loads of people have gone into it, and people have been using that as the platform to get into the banking sector, which is great, which is very okay. But you have to, if you're not getting into that industry, I kind of emphasize getting to do training. Just to address some interviews, they will still expect, even if they call you for an interview, yes, they see something that you like on your CV, they will still expect you to have some prior knowledge, some good knowledge in that area of KYC AML. That's why some form of one-on-one training is very important. I've helped some people. I've seen some people who have also referred to some persons within the forum who they've helped them to be able to have that one-on-one discussion, to have some practical experience. Anthony talked about having to understand some structure, some more complex structure, or more high-risk type of clients, or more complex structures in terms of trust. In my days in BAMO, it was the most difficult structure to explain to clients because I was engaging with clients and I had to talk about KYC to clients. And when it came to trust, oh my God, it was the most difficult one for me. So I never just understood it. So one-on-one training goes a long way. So I always encourage people, if you lack any experience in the area, feel free to reach out to someone that will give you the practical experience in that area. Even if you have not done it, it goes a long way in your interview process.
John, can I just interject for a minute?
Sure.
I just wanted to share a practical example of a CV that I saw. I did actually invite the person in for an interview, as it happens, but they say that there's a statement that the person has said, I perform risk-based financial crime due diligence on actual and potential clients of the firm in accordance with policy and procedure. In my view, so that may come across as very impressive English put together, fantastic, or English, brilliant, but that makes absolutely no sense. Say what you actually do. Don't use fancy words like risk-based. Everyone is using a risk-based approach, and half the time they don't even understand it, because everyone thinks risk-based approach is, oh, let's use risk-based approach not to do the regulation, right? You can actually use risk-based approach to overdo the regulation. I was sharing with John in another presentation, was it last week, John, that for one of the clients we are onboarding in John's department, we've actually used a risk-based approach to overdo the work. For that particular type of transaction, we don't necessarily look at counterparty, right? But there's been an alert that has triggered my analyst to go and look at the counterparties, which has led to one of the counterparties being a sanctioned entity, right? So ordinarily, we wouldn't have raised the sanction referral to the financial crime team, but we've had to. Okay, so risk-based approach can go both ways. So when you kind of put that on your CV, I perform risk-based approach financial crime due diligence, that is a laugh. And when you go and you ask the person, what does that actually mean? Oh, I do CDD KYC. That was just, my managers and I said, okay, let's just invite the person in and see what they actually do. But on another day, when you've got maybe 10 CVs, like John and Anthony both said, it is quite saturated. You've got quality CVs out there, a lot. So when you've got 10 CVs that you're looking at and other people are being very factual, this is what I do, no frills, this is what I do, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to invite you in because guess what? You're talking a load of nonsense. So just be direct, just be honest, and it will eventually find the right manager for you. If the manager invites you in, then yes, come in. The last point I want to make, and I'll give it back to John, is for those of us who have been in the industry for a very long time, okay, what, like John said, what training have you been doing? What else do you read? Right? What Anthony talked about in terms of the fifth money laundering, the fourth, fifth, and the sixth money laundering, how much do we actually know about it? If you're in front of me and I've asked you, okay, so when what are the most up-to-date regulations we're using? The answer I got yesterday was, well, it depends. It depends. The financial crime team normally tells us what's changed and we just do it. Those days are gone. The days are now, you in the 1.5 role, you need to know what they know, because they are not your keeper. You are your own keeper. Learn the job, and that's it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, John, for that. So let's open the floor. Let's have some more questions from the participants. Let's open the floor. Let's make it as engaging as possible. Feel free to unmute your phone, your mics, and just ask the questions.
Yeah, I believe John and Anthony, they've already given a better explanation of what is required and what employees want to see on our CVs. I noticed some people actually put in their CVs what they haven't done. There is nothing wrong in putting things that will, that will capture the eyes of the employer, to enable them to contact you for the interview. But the most important thing is this: while you're putting those things, please go ahead and, get yourself involved in training. Get someone that has the experience. If you don't have, like John said, John O made a comment about people that don't have the experience. It's good for them to be honest. The market may not necessarily be looking for people that do not have any experience at all. Most times they want someone to come and hit the ground running. So it's better for you to go out there and get someone that will help you, teach you the job. If you don't know how to do it, teach you the job. So when you get an interview, make them understand that you're just starting. So they wouldn't expect much from you. But you're not supposed to, go in there without any knowledge. It's not going to help you. So my advice to everyone is try and learn, read up online on different topics like anti-money laundering related topics, sanctions related topics, things related to sanctions. Ask questions on sanctions on a daily basis. They want you to understand where are they located? Are you supposed to onboard them? Are you not supposed to onboard them? And the another thing is different companies have different policies, processes, and procedures. So if you're going for an interview, read up on the company, understand the way they function, and then the particular role you're applying for, how will I put it? What are the wordings? What are the requirements for that role? Are they replicated in your CV? Definitely, if you must put them in your CV, you're expected to know how to do it. So are they replicated in your CV? Because the system, some companies, they use a system to carry out to select for the recruitment processes. They do selection processes, and the system is built in a way that the system is expected to capture some wordings on those CVs and use it to do the first selection at least. And then the person that's doing the final selection will decide, on the best steps to take in order for them to get the best candidates. So read up on the JD, the job description for that role. Read up on it. Look at your CV. Does it replicate what they have there? And those things, that information, those wordings there, are they actually what you've done? You may have done them in one way or the other. So pull them out and apply them on your CV in a way that it will reflect your past or previous experience. Yeah, that's just what I want to say. And don't add in your CV where you haven't worked. This is very, very serious. Most people put companies that they haven't worked before. Companies these days are not stupid. They do go extra mile to make sure that they get the right candidates or the right employees. So if you know you haven't worked somewhere, do not bother adding it. You can look for a company where you can do maybe a voluntary role. They don't need to pay you. It's part of the sacrifice. Look for somewhere to do a voluntary role. They will train you on the job without pay. And then you learn. Just give it like 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. You're done with it. And you move on. Look for a better job somewhere and move on with your life.
I think it's a very good
That's
one.
it. Thank you.
Thanks, Aquila. That's a very good one in terms of having to get work experience. I've had people ask me a lot of time in terms of where can I get that work experience. It's always very challenging. So if anyone knows where they can actually get work experience, please feel free to let me know so that in case we get such inquiries, we can also refer people to some companies where they can get some prior work experience. I think that's very helpful. Okay. So more questions, please, before we round up at least for the next 10-15 minutes.
Hello?
Yes,
Hello,
please.
can you hear me?
We
All
can
right,
hear you.
so yeah, thank you, John, for organizing this, and to the speakers, Anthony, John, and Aquila. Thanks for those excellent presentation. My question has to do with, knowledge of regulations. I know there are, courses out there you could do. At the same time, I do understand that experience counts a lot. Can any of you just signpost me or signpost us to documents you can lay hand on in order to read some of these regulations? That's if you are not, registering for a course, like the 5th anti-money laundering. I know all these things exist. I'm not in a KYC role. I'm not in a CDD role yet. In fact, I'm in a clerical role in the real sense of it. I work in the bank. I've spent 10 months now, and this is an area I really want to go into. But is there a particular or a systematic documentary evidence where one could lay hands and read through these things, maybe with scenarios and what have you? If you can help us and point us to the right direction, please. Thank you.
Hi, is it Mutui?
Mutui, yeah, Mutui.
Mutui, thank you. There are a few different materials and resources that you can actually utilize, but one of the easiest way to get this information as a starting point is to look at the JMLSG.
Okay.
Yeah. Please look at the JMLSG. It's the way they've written it is not convoluted at all. It's fairly straightforward.
Okay.
It's not technical. It's a bit scary because it tends to be a huge document.
Yeah.
But to be fair, once you get yourself into it, you will float right through it. And it will give you a very, especially for where you're coming from, it will give you that solid understanding and foundation that you actually need to build.
All right. Thank you very much, John. Yeah, I got that. Thanks.
It's free as well, by the way.
Yeah, I can see it straight away. I've Googled it.
Well done.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, for joint money laundering steering group documents, it's as if it's teaching you how to carry out your role. It tells you everything that you need to do. If you want to report a SAR or file a SAR with NCA, it guides you on the step to take. If you want to onboard a client, high risk, low risk, medium risk, it tells you what to do, the steps to follow to enable you do that. So it's very, very comprehensive. As John O said, it's a very good material to visit if you can.
Oh, thank you very much, Aquila. Thanks.
Yeah, more questions, thoughts before we round up. It's a good time to speak with the experts now. Okay. Do I assume there's no other question in the forum? Well, I think to Motia as well, I think there might be people in the same vein in terms of they are not really in that area. They might be working in the banking sector. I've seen so many like that. They're in the banking sector and they want to move into AML compliance. So that's why, you know, I did make reference to that one-on-one training as also. I think that would be very helpful. If you fall in that category, just let me know. Let me know after this uh, webinar, and I could point you in the right direction to refer to some people within the forum themselves who train one-on-one, and they could guide you. I think it would be very, very helpful. I know someone that does it almost on a daily basis. So I think that very, very helpful in terms of having that practical experience. If you haven't done it, but once you happen to have cases, use cases, it helps with the interview process. Because if you go an interview, nothing as bad as when you're an interview, you don't talk from your practical standpoint. If you've done it before, you're very confident. You could cite examples here and there. It shows that yes, you know what you're talking about. But if you haven't done it, it's a challenge. That I get, but that one-on-one experience from people who are maybe who provide training in that area, I think it goes a long, long way.
John, just a very quick one, if I may add as well. For those of you already in those roles, and even if you're not in the role, when you're given certain tasks that are quite difficult, you know, the type of task that nobody wants to do in the office, or certain clients that nobody wants to onboard because it's just a headache. Those are the type of tasks that you need to really embrace and take on, because those are the tasks that when you go in for your interviews, that is what you're going to use as a practical example, because you need practical examples when you go for the interviews. You need those practical examples. If you're the type that says, oh, I just want to go and do my work, and you don't expose yourself to any challenges like coaching someone else, even if you don't feel like you know much, coach someone else, even if it's a bit more of a challenge for you in terms of additional work, do it. Because when you go in for an interview, these are some of the things that interviewers look out for. So share with me an experience whereby you've had to coach a colleague who was struggling with their work. If you've never done that, then you're not going to know how to do it or give a practical enough answer. As Aquila Emalaro said, if and when you're given that opportunity, they want people who are going to hit the ground running. Okay, don't turn up green. And when the door is open for you to go and interview, then you must make sure that you go in fully prepared with your responses. And in your answers, especially for competency-based questions, please use the STAR approach. Use the STAR approach: your situation, your task, your action, and the result. Other people may use other mechanisms to answer questions, which is fine, so long as it has a structured approach to the way you answer your questions. Then I think you put yourself in a very good position to succeed. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So we could round up. Any other comments from anyone? So we could round up. Yeah, from the speakers, any other thoughts before we round up for today? Yeah, okay. Just want to say huge thanks for everyone and for joining, and thank you to Aquila, thank you to Jono, and also to Anthony for your input. I trust this has been quite beneficial and helpful. I think we should do this again, maybe in the next three months or so, or maybe to look at drill into some topics, maybe like I think we could look at the issue of trust, mutual funds, and look at beneficiary ownership and how to understand the trust structure and all that. Maybe we could look at that in the nearest future, just to drill in a little bit more and make it as practical as possible. I think we could do that. Maybe just give a couple of months time, maybe 2-3 months, we could look at that again. I think the idea is that we could be we could help each other and share our successes and our challenges. So,
John, can I ask a last moment question if I'm allowed?
Okay,
because I just joined it a bit late. If someone has an experience regarding these research kind of job, not particularly related to KYC, but of course something related to that, a lot of like if not know your customer, at least know something about the big high-fi profile of the business and all. So basically someone was related into this research kind of the way you have done a lot of detailed research about a company or a particular director, etc., etc. But you have a gap in your CV. Probably you were raising your child up or for family reasons. And when you come back to hit the market, should you be talking about that which you have in the past, which is like a gap of 10 years? I mean, does that matter, or it is like you're backlogging? I mean, I need to have an answer for that if anyone can.
That's one of the best places to start from anyways. Yeah. You don't have any other experience to tell them or to present to them. The only experience you've got is the researches you've carried out in the past. And while you were doing these researches, you were actually looking into different client types, investigating on their legal representatives, the ownership structure, and every other information about the entity. So that's a very good base to start from. You put it there that these are the things you have done. And if possible, while you're nursing your baby, if you can just get somewhere, maybe once in a week, where you just be going to learn the job more, so you don't forget. You know, that will go a long way to help you. You also put that in your CV that you've worked in a place of that kind. And when they're looking at you, that yes, this lady knows what she's doing. You can give her a chance.
If it is not related to straight away directly to finance, but you are definitely digging out information regarding KYC for some other reason, would that be also countable? Of course, yes, should be.
Yeah, I remember very well. Anthony can bear me witness. When I used to work for Bank of America, I noticed something about the managers within the onboarding team. If you tell them you've worked in, if you tell them you've worked in a legal firm, they look for you. In fact, they tell you to start work the next day, because they believe that lawyers or people that work in that environment, all they do is to analyze documents.
Right.
If you
give
have
an investigative mind, actually. Yeah.
Exactly. You have that investigating nature in you. You know what to do when you're looking into a document. You know where to go to. You know what to look out for. What are you looking out for? You're looking out for information that will confirm what the client has already told you, whether they're legitimate or not, whether they're false or fraud or anything of that kind. That will help you to make informed decisions. So if you're that kind of person, you go a longer way, you get what you want. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you for your answer. I mean, it's so much convincing, and I feel more confident. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for your question.
Thank you, John. To you too.
That's all right. Just want to say thank you to everyone. Thank you to panelists for doing some justice to the topics and to make us open as possible. Thanks everyone for joining. And so hopefully we could make this a quarterly thing and try and run some of these discussions. So if you're bold enough to be a facilitator in next one, feel free to touch base with me, and so we could discuss any way in your journey. We want to see successes. So when the jobs kept coming, feel free, be bold enough, share in the forum. I say I got the job. Oh, wonderful! So we could rejoice and celebrate with you. Some people have a way of kind of hiding these things, but I don't share those opinions. I always like celebrating when things happen, good things happen. I like celebrating with people and enjoy and see them succeed. in the various. I want to see that the forum is yielding its fruit. I just want to see people just be in the forum and just being there for being sake. But I want to see results coming out from the KYC forum. So thanks everyone once again, and hopefully we will connect very soon in due course. And so have a good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Yeah.
All right. Have a good evening. Cheers. Okay. Okay. All right. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Yeah, let's see some faces before we go. Let's see if we can make that a full view. All right, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thanks,
Thanks.
everyone.
You're welcome. Thank you. Bye.